Teachers of Reddit, what's the most cringe-y thing a student has done in your class? Not a teacher, but I had some freshmen saying, "Dude, I took 6 of those Xanax you gave me and I didn't die," to which his friend responded to that was Claritin, idiot. Xanax, Claritin, what's the difference? Currently student teaching, so not a full teacher yet. I'm with 7th graders at the moment and it's good to see middle school weirdness is still alive. One day we were doing group work. I put all the students in each period into groups. It was only my 2nd week, so I checked the groups out with my cooperating teacher beforehand to ensure it was a good balance, no bad history between the students. Made some minor adjustments and it's all good to go. All goes well until 6th period. While the students were working, I visited each group to see if they had any questions or needed help. I get to group C and they're doing fine except for one girl. I ask her why she doesn't have any of the answers written down. She responds, "I don't like group work." Fair opinion. Group work is not for everyone, but it is important to be involved with the process regardless of whether it's your favorite or not. I ask the rest of the group to share their answers with her before leaving to check other groups. She's a smart girl, but just did not want to write the answers down for whatever reason. 10 minutes go by and I return to group C. The student still does not have any answers written down. I get it, but as a teacher I encourage her to actually take down the answers she is helping her group discover. She instead asks to go to the bathroom. I tell her she can as soon as she writes down the group's answers to the questions. It was only 5 questions so far. She quips back, "Straight face, no bulls," but I just crap myself. The boys in the group bust out laughing and the girls are disgusted. I am a unique blend of confused, disgusted, and concerned, so I'll let her go. I then inform my cooperating teacher of what she said. The girl does not have any special education accommodations and seemed like a typical 12-year-old before this incident. My cooperating teacher responds, "Oh yeah, she does that sometimes. Apparently it's slowly becoming a thing with this girl that she will just crap herself to get out of assignments, as it has happened with other classes. I've come to admire the student's dedication. Just wish it did not involve her crapping herself. She's metal as frick and certainly did not think any classroom duckies were cringy. However, it made me cringe horribly. She's currently seeing the school therapist about it. I feel like you should just let this continue because it's going to be epic when she gets her first job." Teach high school. Had to cover the semi-formal one night. Female student. Sweet, nice, friendly and all that, wanders up to me as she's coming in. "Hey Mr. So-and-so, how do I look?" That's a trap. No good can come from the following answer, so I say something on the lines of good. Admittedly she was wearing a skin-tight white miniskirt. Good? I was going for S. My boyfriend just broke up to me and I am out to make him insanely jealous. Okay, good luck with that. My teacher was always very sarcastic and didn't have a filter. He would just say whatever was on his mind and people loved him for that. One day I go up to him and ask him if I can't take a quiz that I was absent for. He whips out the Scantron and sarcastically says, "I don't like you." I knew he was joking but didn't know how to reply, so I said, "Yeah, I don't like me either." He immediately started apologizing and says, "Hey man, I was just joking around when I said that. If you ever need to talk, I'm here for you." Pretty sure he spent the rest of the semester thinking that I was deeply depressed. A couple weeks ago I had a student say she was in a bad mood since her brother had died in the Parkland shooting. I teach in Oregon. This was obviously false but confirmed false by her parent later that day when I called feigning sympathy. "Oh, I'm in a bad mood just for today because my brother died." Not me, but my wife is a middle school history teacher. She was going over recent African history, teaching the kids about South Sudan, etc. One of the girls in the class asks if she could teach them about Wakanda. Straight-faced, completely serious. Teaching a group of grade 10s. Boy in the front row is happily picking his nose, rolling it between his fingers and eating it. I'd expect this from smaller kids, but not from a 16-year-old. Was tough to keep a poker face and carry on teaching. I can't tell if the other kids noticed what he was doing. Not a teacher but a kid in my college composition class held up his paper and said, "Dubs, check EM," while pointing to the grade on his test that were matching digits. No one laughed, just stared at him like he was a lunatic. You finally found the mysterious hacker known as 4chan. We were talking about vestigial structures yesterday in biology and specifically pelvic bones in whales, and I asked the kids what a pelvis was for. A 10th grader immediately shouted out thrusting. We have a Rocky Horror Picture Show fan. In a middle school social studies class, 5 of my students, 3F and 2M, decided it was a great idea to share a ring pop. They lick past that crap like it was no big deal. It skeeved me out. I just brought a trash can over and had them throw it away. They lick past that crap. One of my students was giving a presentation, and at some point during the presentation she mentioned that her ex-boyfriend wouldn't go down on her because she didn't shave her pubic hair. I was stunned, but the other students apparently thought this was a good conversation topic, so everyone else started trying to chime in about their personal grooming preferences. I never thought I'd have to tell an entire class that it wasn't okay to describe their pubes, but I guess there's a first time for everything. Interesting. Not me, but my girlfriend is a teacher. 5-6-year-olds. The previous year they had used clip-on ties, but they had replaced them with elasticated ties as the clip-ons kept falling off. One boy comes back from the toilet and asks girlfriend to put the tie on for him, which he proceeds to do. She asks him why the tie is wet, to which he replies it fell in the urinal, and I weed on it. Safe to say she lets them all do their own ties now. Back in 10th grade, a teacher asked how many atoms are there in a block of ice or some crap. Some kid yelled over 9,000 and like nobody else got the joke. It went dead silent for a few seconds and I wanted to kill myself out of cringe. Entirely possible that they understood the joke but found it unfunny. Obligatory not a teacher, but my dad is. High school. Apparently one day he witnessed one student trying to convince another that his phone screen wasn't glass by continuously throwing it at the ground. He would pick it up and go, "See, it didn't crack. If it was glass it would have," or something like that. Threw the phone at the ground again and it shattered. That's not cringy, that's douchy. Not a teacher, but another guy in my class said he deserved an A+ on a test because I have more Fortnite wins than everybody in this class. All his friends started arguing about whether or not he did, in fact, have the most Fortnite wins. I'm a college professor now, but this happened while I was an undergrad. During the first week of class, my Poly 101 class, the professor asked us to each read a book review about one of the books on the required reading list. I forget why, but that's not important. So later that week when he asks who found a good review, this girl raised her hand and started talking about this review of a seemingly random book. When the professor asked her what book is this a review of, she said, "Well, I googled the words required reading and found a list of books and this was a review of one of those books." We were all speechless. She didn't realize he was asking us to read about a required book on our own course syllabus. Oh, that is a person who is not going to finish college. 6th grade teacher here. My class was talking about composting. One of my students says that you can put eggshells in a compost bin. Without hesitation, another girl asks, "Will that make eggplants grow?" I'm dying laughing, as is the rest of my class. This poor girl was dead serious and asked again because she needed an answer. I am one of the cool teachers. Not everything has to be about education, so I told my students to do a project on the history. I teach history on anything they liked. One kid did it on the history of being a brony. He even dresses up as one of the ponies. Gave a 5-minute presentation on the history of being a brony, with references to clopping, and he even passed out samples of his own fanfiction. But I was special and got a packet full of Greek mythology, my fav subject, references in the My Little Pony show. He was a really nice guy, but God Jesus, it took every ounce of my being not to laugh. And he even passed out samples of his own fanfiction. Stop, no more. Not a teacher but a school counselor. I was inside a 7th grade Chinese language class where the teacher was explaining the assignment, which was to write a speech about your favorite TV show and present it in class. This kid raised his hand and asked, "Does RedTube count?" I have a 5th grader who runs like Naruto everywhere he goes. Even if we're walking in a straight line to the library, he leans forward, throws his arms out behind him, and does high knees all the way to the library at a walking pace. Not a teacher, but my boyfriend's dad worked at a school. He was cleaning up after school and extended day was out at recess. He hears help me coming from the girls' bathroom. He didn't want to go inside, so he calls in, what do you need help with? Do you need the nurse or a teacher? And she responds back, I need someone to wipe me. Confused, he yells back, what do you mean? You can't wipe yourself. Mind you, this little girl was probably 8, and she screams back, gross. No, my nanny does it for me. You have to send someone in here to wipe me or call my nanny. I hate rich kids. One student I have, 5th grade, keeps multiple dryer sheets in his pockets and backpack. You can always smell him when you walk by. I'll take that scent over other 5th graders' scents any day. That sounds pretty pleasant, lol. I was a special education teacher teaching students with severe emotional disturbance, said one of my more challenging 3rd graders. Collected a bunch of unused staples and jammed them into his gums because he wanted to give himself braces. I was being observed by another lecturer once as part of our 2-yearly observations to make sure we are up to industry standard and adhere to proper practices. As I was doing a demonstration, the only girl in my class came up to me, sniffed me and said I smelled good, right in front of the other lecturer. I genuinely thought I was losing my job, but I got given a good write-up for the observation, so I guess it was tea that bad. I pretty regularly have someone who is the class clown, but not quite funny enough to make it work. This student is usually a male student and socially awkward, but seems to want to have friends and be seen as cool. So, they make cringy jokes, some of which, I will be honest, I recognize from the internet even though the person tries to make it seem like they came up with it. The rest of the class sometimes laughs, but usually they don't, and I can see people side-eyeing each other sometimes behind his back. I am extraordinarily socially awkward, so I understand, and I usually try to either incorporate the random comment or laugh at the joke, which, to be honest, I tend to find funnier than most people, maybe because I am also an embarrassing person. To be clear, this type of student is usually polite, like they aren't disturbing class or being rude or doing it too much. That is a different case. It is just they really try hard, and it's a delicate age where trying hard is uncool and easily noticed by the other students. Crap, I am this person. I was subbing 4th grade and there was this girl who was apparently the smartest girl in class, an attention seeker, and a manipulative kid. They had to write an essay and read it to the class. She kept saying my dad, I mean my sperm donor. Apparently her mom calls her dad her sperm donor, and she wasn't allowed to acknowledge he was her dad after the parents separated. That's pure evil. I'm not a teacher, but in my 10th grade biology class, the teacher sat at the front of the room with a clear view of all the students. She noticed a kid in the back wasn't paying attention to her presentation and was playing with something under his desk. She stood up and wrote on the board, what do you got there? Student's name. The whole class turned around and caught him in the act of fiddling his diddly. He didn't stop after realizing he was outed by the teacher. At first, some kids laughed. Some left the room or turned away. A couple just stared blankly. She turned bright red and frantically called the security guard to remove him from class. But he had finished before he got there and walked himself to the principal's office. The last little bit was the most awkwardly silent minute I have even witnessed. Dear God, what is wrong with him? My math teacher found a piece of human crap in her car. Literally, someone broke into her car and took a dump. Frankly, I am not surprised because she was a really bad teacher. Sorry, not a teacher, but my teacher, Mr. Watch's name, has an autistic son. During class, Mr. Watch's name had to leave. My classmate Ben asked why, and Mr. Watch's name said, I have an appointment with my autistic son. And Ben starting laughing his butt off. No one else in the class even spoke a word, just Ben awkwardly laughing. I knew some people while I was in high school who thought autism was a meme and didn't realize it was a real thing. I am a teacher, but this didn't happen in my class now, but rather about 18 years ago. The weird kid was volunteering at the library in high school. When I went to check out a stack of books, he yelled time me and started scanning them super fast. I still yell time me at the self-checkout sometimes. Obligatory, not a teacher, but someone pooped in the back corner of my freshman English teacher's classroom while everyone was at lunch. Shouldn't have given her a group project. In 8th grade the teacher counted down from 5 to stop everyone from talking. What are we freaking 5? When she got down to 1 a kid stood up and started singing the entire Little Einstein's theme song. Everybody just freaking stared at him silent until he finished. Nobody talked to him the rest of the day. Power move. Taught high school 30 years. One day, a girl wearing a low-cut top stops the class to say, "Mr. Teacher, would you please tell everyone to stop looking at my breasts?" Mr. Teacher. I'm not a teacher, but this was in 11th grade I believe. I usually sat in the back of the class and apparently some guy was taking pictures of this girl's feet that was sitting next to him. The chick sitting behind him saw it and grabbed his phone and saw the pictures he took. She then decided to yell out, "Why are you taking pictures of names?" Feet, showing his phone to the entire class. The kid grabbed his phone and read as a freaking apple, got up and left and didn't come back to that class for like 3 days. Not a teacher, but when I was in year 7 there was a kid who decided to set another student's sleeve on fire because he was a little crap. Good times. One of my friends slammed a pencil through another friend's hand for fun in year 5. Not a teacher, but I coach high schoolers. One day during practice, the boys find a random pair of panties that a girl had obviously had a period in. I didn't think much about it other than it was pretty weird item to find laying around. We practice at a local park and told them to leave them alone. Weeks later, they resurfaced when I found out they had been passing the pair around by putting them in each other's equipment bags as a joke. Had an about 20-year-old college student ask me to cut something for him. I handed him scissors, he handed them back and told me his mom didn't let him use them. I just stood there dumbfounded and told him that it's okay to use scissors in college. We had a high ropes course and zip line brought in this year. One of my kids gets down from the course, takes off his helmet and barfs violently into it. He got to keep the helmet. Not very cringy. Poor kid. Yeah, it's wimpy, but cringe is more like when someone does something on purpose that causes you to feel awkward. My mom teaches. One morning during homeroom, student announces to the entire room full of kids that a girl who's a student there junior high school is peeing in the bushes outside the classroom. Everyone turns to look out the windows, which make up one entire side of the room, and sure enough, girl is squatting with her pants around her ankles in plain view of around 40 students and my mom. Something about the glare on the glass prevented her from seeing the room was full of people. Entire class bursts into laughter and the girl hears this, realizes she's being watched and quickly pulls up her pants and gets the heck out of there. I'm sure the girl had to hear about that for the rest of her time there. Not a teacher, but looking back, it was probably pretty bad. This was when the OG memes were really popular. Forever Alone, Troll Face, etc. was in science class, and the teacher handed out his monthly assignment, which I never did cause screw it. And as the class is quietly listening to the instructions, he looked at me and said, "So and so, I challenge you to actually do it this time. You can guess where it's going." My friend to my right whispered quietly, "Don't do it." I stood up, my stool sliding backwards a few inches, put my hands on my hips, raised my chin high and said, "Challenge accepted." No one laughed. I sat down, proud AF of myself. Not because they didn't get it, but because it was cringy AF. 12-year-old, in the middle of a lesson on puberty, announced to the class that he masturbates. We aren't allowed to discuss masturbation in these lessons, so I pretty much just said okay and we moved on. It was unusual. Not me, though I am a teacher, but my wife. So, thanks to the mortgage crash of '07, my wife and I, even on teachers' salaries, were able to buy an insanely nice house in an upscale neighborhood. Basically, where all the doctors, lawyers, and business owners are. That matters later. So my wife has to teach this one young woman, we'll call Ghetto. Ghetto was foul-mouthed, opinionated, and entitled. She dressed like a straight-up hood rat and acted like her entire life was her audition reel for the Bad Girls Club. So, as the prom approaches, Ghetto sets her sights on this new boy in school. Apparently he was upscale, well-dressed, and well-spoken. So how does Ghetto get his attention? One day she walked into class wearing what looked like a robe and carrying a big piece of poster board. She walks up to the front of the room. My wife tells her to sit down, But Ghetto is the realest bee in the room and won't be told what to do. She get to the front of the class, drops off the robe to reveal she is only wearing a string bikini and holds up the sign that said, "New guy, you have a bad butt dong for this bad butt bee. Will you take this badass bee to prom?" New guy turns bright red and clearly, but emphatically says no. He's already got a date. Ghetto deflates, then realizes she did this at the beginning of class. So she collects her robe, puts it on and sits down. My wife said, if she wasn't such a pain in the butt she would have felt sorry for her. She assumed this girl came from a bad family in the wrong part of town. Wrong. We found out a few weeks later as we took our kids trick-or-treating that she lives 4 doors down from us. Both her parents were doctors, and she just liked the whole ghetto trash thing. A bunch of 13-year-olds asked me the other day if it was true that they were going to get their frenum torn when they lost their virginity. Their half sheepish, half relieved faces when I started laughing out loud were priceless. A student peed on the lab table in the back of the room during the lunch period, and then tried to convince me and the other students it was Mountain Dew. It might have been Mountain Dew at one time. Had a 7-year-old try to start a fight with a 16-year-old at lunch. It wasn't hard to resolve because everyone was just like, what, why, how did you think that would end? Including the 16-year-old. I want to know what school this is at where 7-year-olds and 16-year-olds share a lunch period. Not a teacher, but in my AP calculus class, we were learning about hyperbolic functions, and when I taught them about hyperbolic cosine, one of the students in the class loudly exclaimed, "Oh my gosh." The entire class simultaneously groaned. That means the pun was good, or was as good as any pun can ever be, that is. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.